in the Soviet Union had anywhere from 6 to 10 abortions in her life. Now, whether you're pro-abortion or anti-abortion, this is not the preferred method of birth control. I think everybody would agree upon that. But there was another problem. Again, since everything was dependent upon the government's central plan, guess what there wasn't often enough? Anesthetics. So imagine having operations like this with no anesthetics. Have a nice day. But healthcare was free, provided by a wonderful, caring government. Okay. Now that was the reality of how that system worked. And it replicated itself in every other communist society. Whether it be in China, or North Korea, or Vietnam, or Cuba, or Poland, or Czechoslovakia, or anywhere else where there was the implementation of such a communist regime. It was politically oppressive, often brutally generating mass murder, and creating a society not of greater equality and rising prosperity, but a pecking order of power and control within the Communist Party regime, and stagnation, and a failure to keep up with any of the economic and scientific and technological progress and availabilities that we in the rest of the world took for granted for decades and decades. Instead, you had mass murder and economic stagnation and a terrible condition of everyday life, hunting for food, attempting to know if somebody knows somebody who can pay a bribe to have access to something in a government store, because otherwise you'd never see it. That was the reality of socialism in practice. Now the other element of this is that why did this system fail? How can we explain why and how this system failed? Well, even if it hadn't been politically brutal, even if it hadn't been an economic dictatorship, even if the people who ran these systems had not attempted to manipulate, control, and abuse their powers for their own personal and ideological purposes, there was an inherent reason why the socialist system as an economic system was going to fail. And that had to do with socialism's lack of a price system and the ability for economic calculation guided by the profit motive. Okay. Socialism's lack of a price system and the ability for economic calculation guided by the profit motive. Well, let me sort of summarize part of the strands that I talked about in the lecture before lunch. I said that in a market economy, individuals have latitude to make a lot of personal choices and decisions. They can make trade-offs, they can decide what they value more highly, less highly. And as part of this, they can decide whether there are mutual gains from trade with people. And they can take advantage of mutual gains from trade because there's private property. I own the dollar in my pocket, he owns the newspaper, I give him the dollar, he gives me the newspaper. Now that simple and trivial example can be multiplied in every way. I supply economic teaching services, I earn income, I then use the money income to buy what others have for sale. Someone works in a factory making shoes, he earns an income from the shoes that eventually will be sold to the consumers, and then with the income that he has earned, he can buy all the other food and clothing and entertainments, haggling in the marketplace, can emerge of mutual agreed upon terms of trade. And the mutual agreed upon terms of trade are the prices at which one thing is traded or exchanged against another. And prices are that crucial link, as I was explaining earlier, that for example, that economist Hayek emphasized, that prices enable us to communicate with each other, tell each other what we want and the values we place upon it. The things we could produce and our judgments as to the price at which we could reasonably afford to sell it. And once prices are formed on the market, individuals can undertake what economists have sometimes called economic calculation. That is, to compare. Well, if I produce this product, what would it sell for? Well, if I have other prices for the factors of production, land, labor, and capital, I can now make a comparison. If I were to produce it at these costs and sold it for that price, would I make a profit or a loss? If I'm looking at two alternative production possibilities, and both seem profitable, well, which one would be relatively more profitable? If I am producing a product, okay, which method of combining the resources would minimize my expenses? For example, I could hire a lot of workers and economize on capital investment by giving them simple and low production tools to work with. Or I could economize on labor, hire fewer workers and give those fewer workers more and better machines, tools, and equipment to produce the product in question, so that the better capital, machines, tools, and equipment, raises the productivity of each worker. Well, which of these would be more cost effective? Hiring a lot of workers but economizing on capital, the tools and machines, or economizing on the workers and investing in the more labor-saving but productive tools and equipment, capital? Well, prices assist the businessman to know that too. He can now, with these market-generated prices for the factors of production, land, labor, and capital of various types and sorts, he can now say, well, if I combine the resources in this way, this is what the money outlay and cost would be. If I combine the resources in this way, this would be my money outlay and expense. Which one will minimize my expenses relative to the price at which I hope I can sell this product at? And therefore, we have the rational use of scarce resources so that no resource more valuable for some other purpose is applied to a purpose where the value is lower. Nothing that would be a loss is made rather than something that's profitable. And that which is relatively more profitable is produced ahead of and given greater effort to than something that is profitable but less profitable. All reflecting what it is that we, the consumers, value and are willing to pay for. That is what gives rationality, order, direction to everything that happens in the market. The guiding role of prices to tell us what people want, the value they place upon it, and make those rational judgments as to how to efficiently and productively produce them to minimize the cost to try to gain the return that's possible there. That is what guides everything in the market. That's why the goods gets in the store. That's why there's the innovations. That's why there's the improvements. That's why there's constant adaptations to changes in new and unexpected circumstances. The price system gives rationality, direction, and order to everything. It is the heart and the key of a functioning market economy, because prices must tell the truth. What the resources are worth and what the consumers want. Otherwise, how do we know these things? And that is what socialism does away with. It nationalizes the means of production, no more private property. And without private property, since everything is owned, planned, and controlled by the government, with no private property, there's nothing to buy and sell. With nothing to buy and sell, there's no gains from trade. With no gains from trade, there's no higgling and haggling in the marketplace. With no higgling and haggling in the marketplace, there's no agreed upon terms of trade. With no agreed upon terms of trade, there's no prices. And with no prices, how the hell do we know what anything is worth and what anybody wants? It is why another economist named Ludwig von Mises said, as he entitled one of his books, that socialism would not generate prosperity, rising standards of living, improvements in the human condition, but would generate and create planned chaos. The abolition of the price system, the doing away with the competitive process, is like putting blindfolders on you and trying to figure out where you're going. Think of prices as sort of like the compass. And imagine a time before